Okay, so this week in cybersecurity has been pretty wild. Like, seriously, we've got a ton to unpack. Executive shakeups, a record-breaking ransomware rampage, Chinese espionage, vulnerabilities popping up like everywhere you look. You've all sent us a ton of articles, briefings, reports, and we're here to make sense of it all, give you the need-to-know insights for navigating this crazy digital world.
You're right. And the thing is, this stuff isn't just for the techies anymore. It affects us all, whether we realize it or not. From healthcare records to national security, even our everyday routines. Cybersecurity touches every aspect of our lives.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the biggest news. The executive branch. It's going through a major cybersecurity overhaul with the new president. Feels like a seismic shift, right?
It is. Think of it like this. The new administration is hitting the reset button on cybersecurity. We're seeing this with things like, President Trump revoking Biden's executive order on AI regulation from 2023. This move throws the future of AI safety into question, leaves everyone wondering what the government's next move will be.
Yeah, and then he dismissed the entire Cyber Safety Review Board on his first day. They were in the middle of investigating Salt Typhoon, that Chinese hacking group that hit all those telecom companies. Seems like a pretty bold move to fire them before they even finish their investigation.
It definitely raises eyebrows. Remember, this board was tasked with figuring out how to strengthen our defenses against these large-scale cyber attacks, especially those coming from China. And their dismissal, well before completing the Salt Typhoon investigation, it raises questions about how seriously the new administration is taking this threat.
Speaking of China, they've been pretty active this week. Espionage, telecom hacks, and their space ambitions are making headlines. It's like they're playing a real-life game of cyber risk.
And they're playing to win. They're stealing intellectual property, breaking into telecommunications networks, and their National Space Science Medium and Long-Term Development Plan. It spells out their ambition to dominate space. This isn't just about stealing data. It's about gaining a strategic advantage in every domain.
Hold on, there's more. A Chinese tech company founded by former Huawei veterans is currently under investigation. Now, that's what I call a red flag. Given Huawei's history, this definitely adds another layer of complexity to the situation.
It does. What's concerning is how these actions fit into China's larger goals. They're not just dabbling in cyber espionage, they're strategically using it to advance their economic and military interests. It's a long game, and we need to understand the stakes involved.
Yeah, this all sounds pretty alarming. I mean, are any of us safe from these attacks? It feels like everything from routers to firewalls to even global payment systems are vulnerable. We saw reports this week of unsecured tunneling protocols exposing millions of hosts. What exactly does that even mean?
Imagine these tunneling protocols as secret underground passages that allow data to travel securely between networks. Now imagine those passages having gaping holes, allowing anyone to eavesdrop or even hijack the data flowing through them. That's essentially what's happening here. And it's exposing a massive amount of sensitive information to potential attackers.
And then there's that MasterCard DNS error that went unnoticed for years. And vulnerabilities in Palo Alto firewalls, which are supposed to be some of the best out there. It's enough to make you want to unplug everything and live off the grid.
It certainly makes you realize how fragile our digital world really is. No system is foolproof. That's why it's critical to understand that cybersecurity is a layered approach. It's not just about having the best firewall. It's about having multiple layers of defense and constantly adapting to new threats.
Okay, well, since we're on the topic of vulnerabilities, let's talk about ransomware. It seems December was a record-breaking month for attacks. And they're evolving in some pretty scary ways.
It was the highest number of ransomware attacks ever recorded. And attackers are becoming more sophisticated. We're seeing things like email bombing, where they flood your inbox with thousands of spam emails, followed by Teams vishing. That's where they impersonate tech support on Microsoft Teams, taking advantage of the chaos they created to trick you into giving them access to your system.
That's devious. So they're basically weaponizing our reliance on technology in helpful IT departments. I remember that attack on Costa Rica's oil refinery last year. Turns out that was ransomware too. Yeah. And the first test of the U.S.'s new rapid response program.
That attack was a wake-up call, demonstrating how ransomware can cripple critical infrastructure. The U.S. Rapid Response Program, called Falcon, stepped in to help Costa Rica recover. But it highlights the need for international collaboration and proactive measures to prevent these attacks in the first place. Think of it like this. We need to be prepared to fight these cyber fires, but we also need to work together to prevent them from starting in the first place. And it's not just nation states we need to worry about. Cyber criminals are getting in on the act too, developing these increasingly sophisticated ransomware strains. They're constantly upping their game, finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities and extort money from individuals and organizations.
Yeah, it's a constant arms race, isn't it?
Yeah.
And speaking of arms races, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. AI, the announcement of Project Stargate, a $500 billion AI infrastructure project involving OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle, has sent shockwaves through the tech world.
Yeah, it's a game changer. This level of investment signals that AI is no longer a futuristic concept. It's a present-day reality with the potential to reshape everything, from healthcare to defense. But with this immense power comes a whole host of ethical concerns.
Exactly. We're talking job displacement, algorithmic bias, and the potential for misuse by malicious actors. It's like opening Pandora's box.
Yeah.
And just this week, a lawsuit was filed against LinkedIn, alleging they used private messages to train their AI models without consent. That's pretty unsettling.
It raises serious questions about data privacy and the ethical boundaries of AI development. Imagine your private conversations being used to train algorithms without your knowledge or permission. It's a stark reminder that as we embrace the potential of AI, we need to be mindful of its potential pitfalls.
It seems like we're facing threats on multiple fronts. Nation-state cybercriminals, even the technology itself can pose risks. It's enough to make anyone paranoid. But before we spiral down that rabbit hole, let's talk about something we can control. The human element.
Ah, yes. The human factor is often the weakest link in the cybersecurity chain. Think about it. We've all clicked on a suspicious link or fallen for a phishing scam at some point. Our own actions or inactions can create vulnerabilities that attackers exploit.
And the sources this week really highlight that. We saw reports of employees entering sensitive data into AI prompts, essentially feeding confidential information right into the hands of potential attackers. And then there's the case of the former CIA analyst who pleaded guilty to transmitting classified information. It's a reminder that even the most secure systems are vulnerable if the people operating them make mistakes.
It's not about blaming individuals. It's about recognizing that humans are fallible. That's why we need to prioritize security awareness training and establish clear procedures for handling sensitive information. We need to build a culture of security where everyone understands the risks and takes responsibility for protecting data.
Yeah, it's like a safety net, right? You hope you never have to use it, but it's there to catch you if you fall. But beyond individual actions, organizations also need to step up their game. I mean, we're seeing vulnerabilities everywhere, from routers and firewalls to content delivery networks. Even Oracle had to patch over 200 vulnerabilities this month.
It's a constant game of cat and mouse. Attackers are constantly probing for weaknesses, and organizations need to be vigilant about patching those holes before they can be exploited. Think of it like maintaining a house. You need to regularly inspect for cracks, fix leaks, and reinforce weak points to keep it secure.
So it's about building a strong foundation and staying ahead of the maintenance curve. And that brings us to a piece of good news, actually. The Coast Guard just released new cybersecurity regulations for the marine transportation system. That seems like a step in the right direction, especially considering how vulnerable our ports and shipping lanes are to cyber attacks.
It's a significant move, recognizing the vital role maritime transportation plays in our economy and national security. The Coast Guard has finally implemented comprehensive cybersecurity standards. These standards aim to protect vessels, ports, and critical infrastructure from cyber threats. But the question remains, will they be effective?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are these regulations just words on paper? Or will they actually make a difference? Who's going to make sure they're enforced?
Well, thankfully, the Government Accountability Office has been tasked with assessing the effectiveness of the Department of Homeland Security's maritime security approach, which includes these new regulations. It's a critical step towards ensuring that these rules translate into real-world security improvements.
So oversight and accountability are key. We need to make sure these regulations have teeth, not just bark. But let's face it, even the best regulations can't solve everything. Cybersecurity is a constantly evolving challenge. And sometimes it feels like the bad guys are always one step ahead.
That's why building resilience is so important. It's not just about preventing attacks, but also about minimizing damage and recovering quickly when they occur. Think of it like this. Even the strongest fortress can be breached, but a resilient one can withstand the attack, minimize the damage, and bounce back stronger.
So it's about having a backup plan for your backup plan. It's about anticipating that things will go wrong and having systems in place to deal with those inevitable breaches. This zero trust model you mentioned earlier, where you assume no user or device can be trusted by default. Seems like a pretty intense approach.
It's a mindset shift, really. It's moving away from the traditional perimeter-based security model and embracing a more proactive, data-centric approach. It's about verifying everything, constantly authenticating access, and assuming that breaches are inevitable.
It sounds like a pretty radical approach. But I guess in this day and age, a healthy dose of paranoia is probably a good thing.
It's not about paranoia, it's about being realistic. We need to accept that we live in a world where cyber threats are constant and evolving, and we need to adapt our thinking and our security strategies accordingly.
Okay, so we need to be prepared for the worst, but also work towards a better future. It's a delicate balance, isn't it? But speaking of balance, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information we've covered today. It seems like every day brings a new wave of threats, vulnerabilities, and alarming headlines. How do we even keep up?
It's a valid point. We're constantly bombarded with information, and it can be difficult to sift through the noise and identify what's truly important. That's why having trusted sources of information is crucial. Whether it's a reputable news organization, a trusted security vendor, or a government agency, we need to be discerning about where we get our information from.
That's where shows like this come in. We're here to help you navigate the information overload and provide you with insights and analysis you can trust. But beyond just consuming information, I think it's also crucial to engage in critical discussions about these issues. What do you think?
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is not a spectator sport. We all need to be active participants in the conversation, sharing our perspectives, challenging assumptions, and working together to find solutions. We need to move beyond simply reacting to threats and start thinking about how we can shape the future of cybersecurity.
So it's not just about protecting ourselves from attacks. It's about building a more secure and resilient digital world for everyone.
It's about understanding that cybersecurity is not just a technical challenge, but a societal one. It's about how we design and use technology, how we protect our data and privacy, and ultimately how we build a digital world that is both secure and beneficial to humanity.
That's a great point. So shaping the future, not just reacting to the present. But let's zoom back in a bit. This week's sources also touched on some pretty unsettling incidents, like the PowerSchool attack. That exposed data on millions of students and teachers.
Yeah, that attack was a stark reminder of the importance of data security and privacy, especially when dealing with sensitive information like educational records. We need to think about the long-term impact of these breaches, not just the immediate damage. These students will be dealing with the consequences of this data exposure for years to come.
And it's not just about protecting data from external threats either. We also saw the case of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, where employees were fired for improperly accessing personal information. It highlights the need for robust internal controls and ongoing employee training.
Absolutely. Organizations need to establish a culture of security, where data protection is everyone's responsibility. It's about clear policies, access controls, and regular training to ensure employees understand the importance of safeguarding sensitive information.
So it's about building a strong security posture from the inside out. But let's face it, even with the best intentions, mistakes happen. People click on phishing links, they forget to update their software, they fall for social engineering scams. How do we balance the need for security with the reality that humans are not perfect?
Well, that's where technology can help. We're seeing new tools and technologies designed to make it easier for people to make secure choices. Password managers can help us create and remember strong passwords. Multi-factor authentication can add an extra layer of security to our accounts. And security awareness training can equip us with the knowledge and skills to spot and avoid threats.
So it's about making security more user-friendly, building those safeguards into the systems we use every day. But technology itself can also be a source of vulnerability, right? We saw reports this week of flaws in routers, firewalls. Even Oracle had to patch over 200 vulnerabilities this month. It's like trying to plug holes in a sinking ship.
It's a constant challenge, and it highlights the need for a proactive and layered approach to security. We need to stay informed about the latest threats and vulnerabilities, implement strong security measures, and constantly update and patch our systems.
So it's about staying ahead of the curve, always anticipating the next move. But with all these threats and vulnerabilities, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. What can we do as individuals to navigate this increasingly complex digital world?
It starts with awareness. Educate yourself about the risks, adopt good security practices, and be cautious about the information you share online. Remember, cybersecurity is not just about protecting data. It's about protecting ourselves and our way of life.
Well said. And I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground. From executive shakeups and geopolitical cyber maneuvering to ransomware rampages and the ever-evolving AI landscape, it's been a whirlwind week, and the takeaway is clear. Cybersecurity is not just a technical issue, it's a societal imperative that demands our attention and action.
We need to be informed, engaged, and proactive in shaping a secure digital future. And remember, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. We all have a role to play in building a more resilient and trustworthy digital world.
So stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay engaged in the conversation. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next week for another exploration of the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity.